Hello. I would like to thank you for joining us for this episode of Dreamers and Doers. I'm Julie Russell, and this is my co-host, Lisa Saunders.
Hello.
We highlight individuals in the southeastern Connecticut area that have found meaning and purpose through everyday events and extraordinary feats. Now, today we have Tom Santos, a local author and talk show host of Books and Things, with us today. We are going to cover the process of how individuals often move from a grieving state to a place of production and peace, and how that has happened for both Lisa and Tom through becoming authors, as well as participating in many, many community activities. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the activities and community events that you participate in, Tom?
Yes, I'm chairman of the Southeastern Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. It's a mouthful. And as such, we have authors and publishers coming to our meetings, which is tonight at the Groton Inn and Suites, excuse me. And that starts at 6:30.
Now that is on Monday nights each month in the Groton area.
Third Monday of each month. Mm-hmm. And we have always have a guest speaker, and it's to help authors get published or try to get even people who are just thinking about writing a book can come and maybe learn. And I also involved with the Park Deck VFW, Men's Auxiliary, the New England Lions Club, and a couple of things I can't even remember.
So the Connecticut Author Publisher Association, the VFW, the Lions Association, and then you also write books and have your own talk show.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
And Lisa, you have published many books. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about what you have published, which I guess I already know a lot about, but could you tell our audience, and then how you met Tom?
Well, I'm from New York. I just moved here 3 years ago. I had written several books before moving here. My first published one was actually Ride a Horse, Not an Elevator, which was a children's novel. But after my daughter Elizabeth was born in 1989, she was born severely disabled. I really hadn't written in I don't know, about 6-7 years, because life was easy. And usually writers don't write when life is easy. But after she was born severely disabled, suddenly I went back to writing. I was a writer in high school, wrote a humor column, thought, okay, I'll be a writer. But then I ran out of things to say. But after Elizabeth was born so severely disabled, she was quadriplegic, she could not speak, she could not eat regular food, and she lived like that for years. Then suddenly, when we got that prognosis, which turned out to be accurate, I started writing again, and had several versions of a book, Loving Elizabeth, or Time to Weep, Time to Laugh. And I was basically done with that book, and had actually signed a contract with a publisher. At the last minute, they let the editor go. And then I kind of put it aside, but then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, Elizabeth died at the age of 16. So I took that book and now had a different slant, although it wasn't about grieving loss so much as it's her life, and then suddenly it ends. And now what I'm trying to do as a result of that is to raise awareness for the disease that caused her disabilities and ultimately her death.
So your second daughter died in 2007?
2006.
2006.
Yeah, February. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that brought you to a point where you resumed writing, which is now your career.
Right. Like I said, I resumed writing after she was born because her disabilities were so severe, but I'm just saying that, and I did have a couple books published while she was alive. Civil War book, like I said, a children's novel, but then I did finish after she died, Anything But a Dog. and then became the parent representative for the Congenital CMV Foundation. Because now that she was gone, that was a way for me to channel my grief into doing something positive, which is to try to prevent that disease from happening to other parents and their children.
Okay, thank you. Now tell us a little bit about how, when you moved here 3 years ago, you met Tom, who has had similar but different experiences.
Yeah.
How did we meet?
Actually, I got an email from somebody in New York where your husband worked and said that, I don't even know if he mentioned the name, that had moved to Mystic and his wife was a writer and he was trying to find an organization that you could join.
Really?
Yes.
This is so strange.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a real estate agent or I don't remember now.
So some random person was trying to
Yeah.
find you a group of people.
Yes, and that's funny.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of remember stumbling upon some Matthew Goldman and other people at Groton Day. They were writers, and I thought, oh gosh, it's so good to be around writers again who understand the struggle of
Because I had called you and
getting published.
invited you to the meetings.
Did you?
And
Okay.
yeah.
And then I said yes, obviously. Okay. And that's when I met a lot of other writers. And you told me right away that you wrote your book, My Son Todd, as a way to share what it's like to lose a child. And actually, and I read your book right away, and it's so different from mine because, like I said, you weren't dealing with this shock while he was alive, whereas I was, dealing with a lot of things while she was alive. Yours was the shock when she was gone. So you spent a lot of time writing about what it was like after he died, with the funeral and people calling and coming over.
Tom, please tell us a little bit about your book, when it was published, what that process was.
I published it, I sent it out to be published on the 10th anniversary of his death. He died in '94, and so 2004 I finished the book. It took me 10 years to write the book. I wasn't writing a book. I was just writing stuff, trying to get my mind clear. I just did it out of, not boredom, but just something to do to keep my mind going, because you do lose your mind. And it's
as a therapist, journaling and writing is often tool that is suggested for people to help understand their emotions.
I didn't know that.
Record them.
And I guess it was therapeutic. I just wrote it, and I let some friends read part of what I'd written. It was 3 years after he died when I started to write it, and it took me 3 years to write the first part. No, it was another 3 years went by, and I started writing the second part of it. But it wasn't going to be a book. I was just trying to write something for my grandson to read, so that he would know what his father was like. And tell you the truth, I never got into that part. It's just the crushing blows of losing him overtook me, and so I just wrote about his funeral, his death, and the stuff that I went through after that. And it's just, you just can't, unless you've been there, you just can't imagine what happens, because your whole life is gone. My ex-wife left me, and I really had nobody to turn to. It's just me by myself trying to suffer through this, and I took to writing the book, and it is a good book. I didn't expect it to be a therapeutic book that people could read and get help out of it. I just wrote a book, and it's been fantastic, because I've had so many people say it helped them understand what it's like.
And it relates your experience.
Exactly. Right. I don't say I did it right. It got me through it. But everybody is different naturally. But a loss of a child can send you into a primal mode that you're trying to claw it back from this experience to find life again. And you find out that a lot of friends won't talk to you. They'll cross the street rather than get you upset.
I had people that didn't even send us a card where I knew they would care, you know what I mean? But I think and when I finally caught up with them, I didn't hear from you. I didn't know what to say.
Exactly.
But they didn't realize that it just hurt. I would have liked to just, we're sorry, even if they said nothing but we're sorry, period.
Yeah, that's all it needs.
But I think they just don't know. They're just so horrified.
No.
I
don't blame them. I don't blame them. It's just they don't know what to say or do.
Well, I think for some people it's such a paralyzing fear, the concept of losing a child, that they don't know what to say.
No, they don't.
And they're not even able to say, I just don't know what to say.
Yeah. I had one friend of mine read the book, and he said the one thing he got out of it, because he was single, wasn't married, didn't have any kids or anything, but he read the book, and he said, he said, I never know what to say when I go to a funeral. Because I say in the book, don't say anything. Give the person a hug or shake their hand. They know what you're there for. You know what you're there for. Just do that and walk out. And but people won't do that because they feel like they got to say something. Don't worry about it.
And that's something, there's a lot of pressure for it to be the right thing.
Yeah.
And in such a time that has so much grief, it's difficult to say anything that will make anyone feel better.
And most of the time they say something wrong anyway. Like, oh, I know how you feel. No, you don't. So, but you just try to get beyond that. My guardian angel, the book is actually my son Todd and my guardian angels. And my guardian angels were both spiritual and real. The people that would come to my store every single day to make sure that I wasn't hanging from a pole someplace.
Now, you say come to your store.
I had a store at the time, yeah.
Now, was this when you were working as a DJ?
No, I was working I had a music store. I sold new
Okay.
and used records and CDs and et cetera.
Okay.
And I went in there just because it was the place to go. My wife at the time was working, and I'd be sitting home alone, and I said, I'm not doing this, so I just go down to the store. Sometimes I just lock the door and go in the back and sit and cry, but you just, you had to do something. But my friends would come in, bother me, and I tell them, get out, because when you're depressed, you really don't want a lot of people around. But they wouldn't listen to me anyway, thank God. And then I used to have a lot of people come to the house, and they sit with me and talk to me, and I've had several people say they thought I didn't think I'd make it through it. But here I am, which is part of the Doers and Dreamers, I believe. It's something that pushes you in a position where you've got to try to live. I mean, you have no choice. You either get yourself a gun or you got to live. And if you decide to live, you got to figure out how you're going to do it. And you can take just so much sympathy, although it was good for dating because women do like sympathy. But you get just so much of that too. You have to move on.
Well, sometimes you have to put a clock on the pity party.
Yeah, yes you do.
Yeah,
And it was enjoyable. I got to eat a lot of dinners at people's houses and things, but you have to put a clock on and say, okay, this is done, and then try to move on. And you think you're out of depression when you're not. 3 years afterwards, when I was writing the book, I thought I was doing well until I sat and read the book. I thought, what is wrong with you? You got to make some changes in it. And then it wasn't probably 8 years before I really kind of got out of depression. And that's that type of depression that you know it's causing it, but you can't make it go away.
Well, grief is actually a very natural process.
Exactly.
And it can morph into depression, but it's cyclical. If you look at the 5 stages, there's acceptance, bargaining, denial, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on these, but sadness and anger. And it's not that you have to go through them once. You go through them over and over and over.
Yeah.
And
I think there's 9 stages, and
there's a lot of different models.
Yeah. And I had a lady talk to me one time. She said, what are the stages so I can do them? I said, it doesn't work that way. You don't look down and say, oh, I can do that.
Often they get very mixed up.
Actually, Jules, you wrote a really nice thing on the stages of grief in the fairy tale that we worked on that, unbelievably, I didn't bring. The Woodcutter's Tale, Surviving Loss. And I thought it was good how you described maybe people aren't ready to go to a party, but you could call them and just say, do you want to do something less scary, like have a cup of coffee? Like you said, you weren't ready for this big social thing. No. But maybe people just sitting with you.
Precisely. Sometimes when you can't pick yourself up to go, and you're not going to be able to hold your end of the conversation because your thoughts aren't really organized, perhaps that's when friends can say, let me come over and watch a TV program, or let's go grocery shopping, to the movies, something that doesn't require a lot of mental energy.
Problem with that is that when you're in a depression state, you really don't want to do it.
True.
You know, they can drag you out, but I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, that insisted that I go to her house for Christmas. And that was the first Christmas I was all alone. And I finally said, okay. I went to her house, and she gave me little gifts and tried to cheer me up. And it was great. You know, I mean, it was 19 years ago, and I still remember it. So it was a good thing. But it's also, I remember that doing it, and I felt so out of place because everybody's trying to have a good time. They're tiptoeing around you, and they don't want to get you upset, and they're trying to be extra nice. And I'm thinking, you know, I don't deserve this. I should be home and back in my room just crying, leave me alone. And but it was a very nice gesture. I really appreciated it. I loved it, and like I said, it's
But those big holidays with lots of people can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And both of your experiences seem to have challenged your worldview, how you looked at the world.
Yeah, it does. Because everything is different now. When you lose your only child, that's your foundation in life. You know, you're building on him, and all of a sudden it's gone. You have nothing left. And from there, I just went south. I lost my house, my wife, and it just got better. But we talk about grieving. The initial shock of learning that your loved one is gone. I've got them listed in the book. Not all of them, but the abandonment, the feelings, the anniversaries, birthdays, the holidays all drive you nuts.
Now, those really are kind of sleeping moments because you may not remember, oh, this is the birthday, this is the anniversary of the death, and even if you don't consciously remember, it's still in the back of your mind.
Oh, I remember. Every
I imagine you remember most things.
Every year for 19 years. It'll be 19 years in July. And it's right there always. It's, you know, after.
So what made you be able to, what did you decide you were going to do to move forward, to really move forward? And
I don't think
make a
I've ever really
difference?
decided to move forward. I think I just kept trying different things. You know, I tried to date. I tried to, I hit the Mohegan Sun. And I met some people up there that I liked, and we got to be friends, and so I'd go up to Mohegan Sun almost every night. And I found out that you can go up there and have a good time if you don't spend money. And I didn't have a lot to spend, but I go up there, have a couple of beers, and go home. But you just try to get ahead. Laughing is hard because you feel guilty. You're laughing. Your child can't laugh. Why should you? Tasting food was bad. There's so many bad parts of it, but you find other interests to try to get you don't push the memories away. You try to replace them and move them aside and get new memories that you can have fun with.
Now, I hear from a lot of parents that they feel guilty if they're laughing. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, they're having trouble connecting with their surviving children that are still
Yeah.
at home.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking, oh, how can we have fun when your brother or sister isn't here? You know, they don't want to say that, but they have a child who needs them.
Yeah.
And how do you have what do you two recommend I say to, because I didn't have that situation. Our other daughter was already grown and in college, so she wasn't home anymore. So I didn't have that, I guess. And what do I say to other parents that say to me, I feel guilty if I'm laughing or having fun?
It's common. It's common. I've talked to people, and I've talked to children of people, and the kids say it's like we don't exist, you know, because all she does is worry about the lost daughter or son. But they do that. I know some people at the cemetery that would go there every day and see and pray to their child, and the kids stayed home, you know. And what do you do with those kids? And those kids don't understand what's going on. And it's, somehow you have to get through to them that they got to take care of the other kids too.
Well,
But they feel guilty about it, so it's hard.
certainly, when people understand that it is a normal response, and they're not the only parents to have difficulty connecting with their children that are still surviving because of the loss of one. If that can be understood as that doesn't make them bad, it's a normal part of grieving, and then if they can find a way to bring the dead child into the family, like, for instance, well, let's make a memory book of the child that passed. Then the other children and the parents can do something that honors the memory of the lost child while connecting positively with those that are still living. Many families that I've spoken to have found some amount of peace in that. In also understanding that usually the person, if the person who died was old enough, would want the parents to connect with the remaining family members and going ahead.
Like, I finally just realized Elizabeth feels so good that sometimes I would feel guilty, but not long, because she was disabled, it was very easy for me to really know that she was free and feeling good for the first time in her life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I thought, she's having fun. I thought she would really want me to have fun. So I guess I didn't have that very long because she suffered, I think. Yeah. And like when we were sailing, I thought, oh, she'd get a kick out of watching me do this, even though screaming, crying through some of it. But when it was good, when I wasn't feeling afraid and the boat wasn't heeling too much and the sun was out.
When the wind wasn't blowing.
Yeah, when the wind wasn't blowing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I found, I do my seminars on the book, is that I tell people I'm the luckiest person in this room. And they look at me like, you lost your kid, how can you be lucky? And I say, I talk about my son every time I go out and do one of these seminars. I stay in here and I tell you all about him, and I can talk to him, and you don't. And I just look at you. And that, I think, is a problem. And you do the same thing with your daughter. You talk about her. We haven't let them die. And I don't think we should. We got to keep their memory alive, because otherwise they live for nothing. And regardless of the mental state, my son was 21 years old and he had a total future ahead of him. But you can't let that die.
That's why that's what brings me peace and not feel hopeless, is trying to raise awareness. I give talks on how to prevent congenital CMV. And plus what it was like to raise her. Like if parents were in the audience with a disabled child from that disease, I don't really discuss some things she suffered, because I don't want them to fear what's down the road, because it may not be down the road for them. Certain, because their epilepsy got worse and everything. That may not be their child's future. So I leave that out. But I just talk about the fun things about raising. You can still have fun even though your child can't speak and move. I mean, she was great because she never was ashamed to be seen with me, like my teenage daughter was, my healthy one. She'd wear whatever I wanted her to wear. Yeah. So in that and she just loved going to the movies, and she would see what I wanted to see. She didn't eat my popcorn. She just sat on my lap, looking very happy to be there. So I mean, there are great things about any child.
Oh, sure. And the other thing I find too is I walk around the house and it's a bachelor and something goes wrong. I go, Todd, you here? Did you do this? And because you got to talk to them, and whether they're talking back or not, I don't know. And of course, then you get blindsided. I walked by a picture. I got a picture hanging on the wall. It's been there for a year. And I walked by the other day. I looked at it and started crying. And I said, where did that come from? I've seen the picture. It's in the book. It's the same picture. And I said, I don't understand that unless, and I think, well, maybe he's trying to get a message to me or something, and that starts it. I don't know, because he had told one of the psychics that I went to that he tried to get through to me, but every time he does, I cry. And I said, well, it's his fault. I wouldn't be crying if he didn't die. So, but I think a lot of that stuff you have to kind of make light of it, and I don't necessarily mean make fun of it, but you have to make light of it, because otherwise you cry.
Well, I think you have to acknowledge it in a non-judgmental fashion.
Yeah.
I'm sensitive today at this moment because the grieving process really is lifelong.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it will ideally become a little less intense, and each episode will become shorter in duration and further apart.
Yeah.
For instance, you said you were walking down the hall and had a moment where emotionally you were overwhelmed and tense. However, if you went back, say, 4 years after your son had passed away, probably it would not have been as short in duration.
Oh no, it'd probably be an hour.
Yeah.
And and that's, you know, we're talking about doing, because of his death, I wrote a book. I've written 2 books. And I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago.
No.
Because my outlook is different. I do more for others. I can sympathize more with others. And it hurts me when I read in the paper about another kid that just got killed in a car accident. You know, I actually feel that, and it's very sad, but I don't feel guilty anymore. And but I've had visits from him too, and I've put most of them in the book, because what appear to me to be visits, they're not dreams. They're just, I actually felt that he was there, and because it's of the situation of the thing. But it's done. It's an experience that has made me a stronger person. It's made me available to other people to help them, and I think that we just keep moving on.
Well, you mentioned your spiritual connection to them, to your son, and I believe that helps many people experiencing grief, whether it is the feeling that they're there with you, or perhaps a more religious, organized viewpoint of spirituality. How we view the world impacts how we view death.
Yeah. But I think I used to blame everybody. I blamed God. I blamed his girlfriend. I blamed his car. I blamed anything I could get a hold of.
Yeah, enough blame to go around.
Yeah, and of course I felt guilty. I blamed myself, and because I must have been something I could have done to stop this.
Right.
Yeah, well, I had to deal with, I caught this virus.
Yeah.
I mean, doctors didn't tell me about it. It was, you are at high risk when you do daycare for young children.
Yeah.
That seems like something that they should tell you. You
would
know, you
think.
read about don't change the kitty litter. Everybody loves to hear that, because who wants to change the kitty litter when you're pregnant? You know? But you don't hear that you shouldn't kiss your own toddler around the mouth or share cookies with them, especially if they're in daycare, because they're more likely to carry that virus. And so parents like me have to deal with the guilt that their child was born disabled, suffered, because they caught something. Now, they are working on a vaccine, but until that time, that is what keeps me motivated, is I will not let her die in vain. You know, whenever I get distracted by a lot of other things that need my attention, then I will suddenly get an email from a parent who didn't know, and they worked in daycare, and now their child is born severely disabled because nobody warned them, and that makes me ill. So I know I have a lot of work to do.
What strikes me, Tom, and we have about a minute left, is that both you and Lisa have found purpose and a way for your children to continue to impact people that are here on earth with us, despite the fact that they have passed away.
Yeah.
And both of you have found meaning and purpose through writing books,
Speaking
engagement.
Okay, well, that's it. We do have to wrap up.
All right, thank you, Tom Santos.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
All
enjoyable.
right.
Bye.
Oh my God.
Okay.
30 minutes.